Welcome back to another edition of the Balas and Skene Show, the Wolverine.com podcast here at the Wolverine.com. With me, Doug Skene, Michigan's five-time Big Ten champion, former All-Big Ten offensive lineman who's looking a little disgusted after watching that game on Saturday night. And I got to be honest, we were kind of disgusted up there watching it as well, thinking, okay, as good as it was up front against New Mexico, and it was better. And I don't care what anybody says. We watched the film. We saw them picking up stunts and twists. We saw a little bit of movement. We saw a bunch of guys that were really seemed committed to being better. And then you get Saturday night in that environment. We said that was going to be the litmus test. And guess what, Skene? They failed miserably. And it wasn't one guy. It was really the interior line that was terrible. Bryce Underwood didn't look like he was spooked or anything, but he did look like, okay, guys, help me out here. He was on the run. He didn't have time to throw. The running backs, some of the things they asked him to do in pass protection, we'll talk about that as well. I thought was kind of a tall order when you had Justice Haynes on a 250-pound defensive end bearing down on him. I remember we talked about that in the Rich Rod era. So we'll talk about that too. But first things first, Skene, your overall thoughts on the offensive performance, really the performance overall. I was really disappointed in the preparation, just the fact that they didn't look like they belonged out there, frankly.
Well, first of all, as we were texting Saturday night there a little bit, I know you're busy on game night, but credit to Oklahoma and Coach Venables there of designing a defensive game plan to take advantage of the knowns. And what I mean by that is coming into the game, Michigan had questions on the offensive line, a very young, inexperienced quarterback, unproven wide receivers, and yet good running backs. So if I'm the Oklahoma staff, I'm thinking, okay, what is Michigan going to try to do? That wasn't hard to figure out, right? They want to run power. Michigan wants to run the football and establish, some dominance up front. So what's the Oklahoma game plan? Downhill attack, roll the first sniff of run. Here comes the safeties. Oh my God, Balas, it looked like the field was tilted.
Yeah.
Like Michigan offense was going uphill the whole time when the Oklahoma guys were just sprinting down a sand dune on Lake Michigan over there on a beautiful summer day. And yet it was into our backfield on what looked like a beautiful summer night in Oklahoma. It just looked like Oklahoma was playing at a different speed defensively because their game plan was attack, hit the gaps, downhill hard, don't let offensive linemen get into their combos to take the time. It was a great game plan, and it worked. The disappointing part was Michigan's response, or what looked like a lack of response to adjust that game plan of ours after the second possession. A lot of times your first two possessions are scripted offensively. You know what you're going to run. And it appeared that Michigan was committed to that, and that's fine. However, after the third possession, when you know you're just taking bullets and your offense is on its heels, it's time to make some changes and get those guys to back off and stop being so downhill. And how do you do that? Well, you got to throw the football down the field. You got to throw a curveball at them and get out of your expected, predicted game plan that Oklahoma had ready for us to get them to change up what they were doing. And that felt like it never really happened. It felt like Oklahoma was just constantly downhill attacking, and it worked. So why would they change?
My question to you is, when you have guys that aren't getting open and you are having a tough time pass protecting as well, when you're doing your three-step drops or whatever, and you get a guy in your face too, because I didn't think they protected very well either in the interior line. So everybody was complaining about the screen games and things like that. But really, that game plan against New Mexico was get the ball out as soon as you can, right? I thought there were a couple of times when they put them on the run a little bit. Now, when you're rolling out, right, you're taking away half the field. It's a cliche, but it's the truth. They had a couple of times where he missed a receiver, a tight end that had gotten behind the defense. But so you say take your shots, and I'm hearing what you're saying, but every time he dropped back to pass, he was under duress as well. So then what do you do?
Well, there's a couple things you can do offensively to not get too Xy and OE on you here, but you can do some bootlegs. You can bring a protector out. You can pull a guard and do the old school bootlegs. So let's say the offensive line, everybody goes left, except the left guard pulls out to the right, and he's the protector for the quarterback. That'd be a standard issue bootleg. Then, for those of you old enough that are watching this, the 1997 Michigan National Championship team ran that play, and they were awesome at it.
Waggle.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
exactly. Or you can run a naked boot where you leave everybody runs into the left, everybody's zone blocking left, and your quarterback, if they're athletic enough, and yes, this kid is athletic enough to roll out there on his right. If there's a first, second, and third level pass open, you throw it, and we know he's good to run and throw it on the throw the ball on the run. He can do that, or he keeps it and runs for a first down. So you can do that. The other thing I was waiting to see to address the defensive front of Oklahoma that was so hard upfield, the old school trap plays, Balas. And I mean inside trap, where you're trapping a defensive tackle, a three technique, who would typically play either head up or outside eye of an offensive guard. So it's a little interior play where your center and your guard work one way, the opposite guard pulls, you kick, and you get a little seam right up the middle. And so I thought we'd see some of that. Michigan loves its power, right? You can bring Bredesen across the formation all the way over, or another tight end to kick block a defensive end. But when you've got defensive ends pressuring down the edges on every snap, you can't run that effectively because they're shutting it down. So what do? You attack the middle by going after some inside trap. I thought we'd see some of that. It didn't happen. The screen attempt in that game made sense, but screen game only works when you've set it up properly. And screen game is a delicate, effective, but delicate play in that you've got to have a defense who is hard upfield, which we had, but you've got to have that second level and third level backing off, which they weren't. So the safeties playing as tight as they were, they sniffed that out. And Oklahoma, yeah, they've got some good players in that defense. They sniffed that out, that screen in the second. And it's just too slow to develop. And then our inexperienced offensive linemen that haven't run a lot of screen in the last couple of years, that's hard to do out there in space, blocking a little defensive back. So those guys whizzed right by our pulling guard, Norton, out there in that one. And it was a tackle for loss. The rest of it, yeah, they were trying to get the ball out of there fast. But again, Oklahoma was so hard upfield. You got to have wide receivers that are going to get open and give that quarterback a second to back them off. So there's things that could have been done, but they weren't really executed.
You talked about the trap. Is that with the play that you ran with Tyrone Wheatley in the 93 Rose Bowl when Washington was getting upfield?
Yeah,
and you see Tyrone taking off. So
if you watch that play, if you watch it recently, and then they show it on the Big Ten, the guy that I was trying to go trap was so hard upfield, I barely touched him with my right hand. He took himself out of the play, and the thing popped for a touchdown. So
and you're like, thank you very much.
Exactly. Thank you very much. I get the positive on the play. I get a helmet sticker. We win the game, yada, yada. The game, the play, the first play of the second half there, Balas, where we broke the 75-yarder with Haynes. The reason that thing broke is because the two safeties, the linebacker and the safety that came down, they were so aggressive coming up. He was just out of position. That was it.
Yeah. Everybody's talking about that play was really, really well blocked and so on and so forth. But you had guys that missed assignments there that really blew the defenders. I thought blew the play. The
defenders blew the play. It was decently blocked. The ball cut backside where it's allowed to cut back there, and that's fine.
Yep.
But a proper defense would have made a tackle probably 5 or 6 yards deep.
Exactly. And Lawrence Tatar had a nice block in there. They went heavy to start the second half, and it was a huge boost. And it looked like Michigan was going to gain the momentum back, but they stalled again, and it was really discouraging. Some of the things that really bothered me were the body language again. When things started to go poorly, right? You can't have that in that environment. You've got to have that ass-kicking attitude that the 2023 team did, right? When they went in there. And like you said, we're going to take over their stadium. We're going to wave to their girlfriends, as they get their chicken sandwiches. And
that's only at the end, though, Balas. That's only
at the end. Right. Exactly. But to me, that really bothered me. And a lot of people are saying the same thing. And you watch it on film, and that you can really tell what these guys are going to do by what Max Bredesen does. That there are some tells in there, and in different formations. When you line him up in the slot, they're going to throw that little flat pass to Samaj Morgan, a little screen, and let him try to do his thing. Did you see some predictability there? And I know that's a fan cliche, but it certainly does seem to me that a lot of what they do is predicated on what Brent Bredesen does out there.
Well, this is, if you go back, 2 years ago, everybody in the stadium knew what we were going to do, and we did it anyway.
Yeah,
that's why that team was so good, right? Yeah. And I had the fortune of playing a team like that. John Jansen's '97 team. We knew what they were going to do. This team is not experienced or good enough to line up with everybody knowing what you're going to do and execute anyway. Obviously, the results on Saturday night would have been much different. Oklahoma kind of knew what we were going to do. So yes, to your question, are we predictable? It certainly appears though we are, right? You can follow our best blocker, which right now is Bredesen, and the ball's probably going to follow him to a degree. So usually you don't have the predictability problems until mid-season when you've got enough film and enough tape on you from your opponents to sort of scout you by formation, down and distance in formation, to get your tendencies like the back of their hand. But it certainly appeared as though Coach Venables at Oklahoma, he knew what was coming. And then again, like I said, you mix in an inexperienced quarterback who has not yet demonstrated a 5 or 7 step drop or a 3-step drop if you're in the gun, sitting in the pocket, dissecting a defense, delivering an accurate downfield throw. We know that Underwood can do that. He just hasn't done it yet. So there's nothing to game plan against.
Yep.
Because until he shows that ability and until our wide receivers show the ability to get open with regularity, what's there to defend, Balas? So if I'm Oklahoma or if I'm Central Michigan or if I'm Nebraska, guess what my game plan is going to be?
Yeah, going to be honest, I did not care for the play action to nobody several times when he's handing off the air. Did you notice that a few times? Okay, you're turning your back first of all to the play, so you're costing yourself some time, and then you're not fooling anybody when you're handing it to Harvey there, the invisible rabbit or whatever back in the backfield. I don't know what the hell they were doing.
Well, let's see here. We don't know, right? Is that just a freshman who's making the kind of freshman mistakes, or is that something bigger? I don't know. I don't
either. So, but that was discouraging. A 3rd and 2 play. Okay. You're down there at the 14-yard line. You're still only down 7-0, right? And you've got a great opportunity here, even though you're getting dominated, to make something happen due to a couple of plays where really some unforced errors by Oklahoma kept them in this game. The punt muff, right? The interception where the safety was out of position, so far out of position that he just so happened to be in the right spot when John Mateer threw his worst pass of the day and threw it right to him. I was hoping that he would stay on his feet, as a matter of fact, instead of going to the ground and taking it the other way, make some of those yards, those hidden yards up, right? Because the offense was struggling so much. But the 3rd and 2, I don't know if that was an RPO. You saw Justice Haynes and Bryce Underwood disagreeing on the sideline about it afterwards. But to me, you're running that ball twice, you're getting the first down, and you're living to fight another day. I did not like that play call and putting that responsibility on your freshman quarterback. I don't know if that was the actual call, if that was an Underwood audible or a check or something like that, but that one really bothered me.
Yeah, anytime we're 3rd and 2 and we don't get 2 yards for a first down and you're Michigan, it's disappointing, especially with the identity that this program is supposed to be, which is heavy power, and then we're going to throw play action off of that. Well, play action is no good if you don't have the first part of it, Balas, as we all know. And so when we're down in 3rd and 2 and there appears to be confusion or hesitation, then the rest of it's not going to go well. And I think what you're referring to is the bigger problem here, in that on that offense Saturday night against that opponent with that defensive staff, this offense looked like it was on its heels all night, taking bullets, reacting instead of attacking. And it was just a symptom on that particular down and distance of what looked like the entire evening. I was not a fan of the way our offensive line was coming off the ball at times. I think because the Oklahoma front was moving right, left, and so heavy downfield. I was watching Sprague on one play when they were moving left to right on the TV screen there, and he had a basic block coming out of his stance, and he just kind of came up and just stood there, kind of froze in his stance, waiting on the defensive end to make his move. And it's like, no, dude, you got to go. You got to get the first foot in the ground, the second foot down, and you got to get into his number, front side or backside number, or wherever your target is. You got to go. And I saw a little bit of too much of that from the entire offensive line all evening. Hesitation rather than attacking. And for Michigan to be who they want to be, they're going to have to be far more attacking, Balas, because like I said, the game plan to defeat this offense has been written, and everybody's going to follow that until further notice.
Yeah, and there will be some defenses, obviously, that have the personnel to do it better than others. For example, New Mexico they tried some of those stunts, and they came downhill a few times, and they picked them up. What was the difference in the game plan, in your opinion, from week 1 to week 2 for Michigan? It seemed to me like There was a little bit more unpredictability on the first day. You didn't know which way the play was going. You had maybe if Bredesen was running one way, it wasn't they weren't always following him. But was it really kind of predicated on how the defense was playing now?
Yeah, I think this had far more to do. This had far more to do with the personnel that Oklahoma has on that defense and the game plan to go along with it, which again is tilt the football field downhill and attack the living crap out of that offense. And if they throw one over our heads, oh well, we'll give it to them. And so that was the game plan, and it worked marvelously. New Mexico obviously didn't have that game plan. They played more of a standard issue defense against us. And yeah, they tried a few things, but they didn't have the athletes that Oklahoma had, obviously. And so you combine those two things together and it spelled misery. And then, oh, by the way, throw in the lights and a loud crowd and the unfamiliarity of the stadium you've never been in before, et cetera. And all that added up to an absolute mess. And so, no disrespect to New Mexico, but, they don't have the guys up front like Oklahoma did. And the other thing, Balas, I don't know what the final count was on the stats for first downs. We haven't talked about it yet, but that quarterback, Oklahoma, that kid's he's really good. He's really good. And that's what you want to see. So if you could take Bryce Underwood, put him into a 3-step play action or deeper drop, there was very little hesitation out of Mateer. He read the defense and delivered a strike. That is what it looks like to defeat an attacking defense.
Yep. And they ran him, I think, 11 times where, okay, you're our running back, right? Go get it. And Sharon Moore did acknowledge today. He said, yeah, I've been hesitant to do it. We don't want our guy to get hurt type of thing. You better have 2 quarterbacks, which they do not. He was talking about Mikey Keene being healthy today in full go, but he can't throw the ball in warm-ups anyway, more than 15 yards, it looks like, without it wobbling and not getting out of there. So I understand his point there, but at the same time, if you look in the NFL, and guys like Lamar Jackson and whoever out there just tearing it up, you can't play scared. So I think they're going to have to unleash him. He said there will be a time and a place for that, and I think you will see that. And I do have to also note that Mateer has been around for a long time. He's seen it all. He's been in that offense forever. So obviously he's going to look pretty good. Well, he's really disappointed, and we'll get to the offense against the Oklahoma offense against the Michigan defense in a minute, but I still want to talk about the Michigan interior line. I thought actually Evan linked it okay in pass protection. If you had told me going into this game that he was going to be the bright spot, though, I would have told you they were in trouble. And if you look at that interior line, there was one play in which Greg Crippen just absolutely got knocked on his ass in pass protection. That just can't happen. Your overall thoughts with the interior, and what was the biggest disappointment there?
Well, Balas, the reason that Crippen got put on roller skates there is because he's physically playing too high. When you start playing football as a kid, your little youth football coach is going to tell you have to have your eyeballs lower than the guy you're blocking against. If your chin is higher and your eyeballs are up and you can see above your shoulder pads of the other guy across from you, you are out of position and you were going to get knocked back on your ass. And Crippen just got too high on that. The defensive lineman got underneath him. Strong dude, put him on roller skates, and back he goes. That can never happen if you're ever going to set a pocket or create some space for your quarterback. And so that's all that happened. It's just bad technique led to a really bad result. And that's going to happen every single time against a quality defensive front. And so that's the thing that I just saw a little bit too much of. I mentioned I thought there was a little too much hesitation out of their stances. Their steps are too short, too guarded, too cautious. Not enough attacking body language out of their stance. They play too high. El Hadi got hurt because he was in a stand-up standstill hanging around a pile, and a guy rolled up on him. That's how you get hurt. So when coaches tell young offensive linemen or veteran guys, you've got to be down below the eyeballs, in the neck, with your eyeballs, hands where they belong, and your hips bent and your knees bent driving, it's obviously to move people to make an effective football play, but that's also how you avoid injuries.
And that's the disappointing part, Skene, is that you got 2 veterans that are making these mistakes, and you're thinking, all right, what's going on here? What is the disconnect? And I'm going to just say this. Dom Jadis, remember Dom Jadis?
Yeah.
Was the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week for Missouri, okay? And I'm thinking, okay, and I'm not here to rip on the coaching staff, right? We try not to do that, but at some point, something is not connecting. Something's not registering here. And these guys should not be making these mistakes at these points in their career.
It's so again, we're not going to go on the Grant Newsom bashing train here, but the facts are what they are. We can only see what we see on Saturdays, and what we saw Saturday was an offensive line playing too high, out of control, out of position at times. And so whatever it is that they do in practice, and I don't know, I know I can tell you some old drills from 30 years ago, but blocking is blocking, and so the guys are not executing the way they need to execute on Saturdays. So whatever it is Newsom and Castillo need to do, along with Sharon's help, it needs to be done ASAP.
Yeah.
And then you better mix in some piss and vinegar along the way with it, because if this offensive line doesn't get dramatically better as a unit, it's going to be a long season, Balas.
Yeah.
You want your young quarterback to develop. You better be better up front immediately. And we got a couple of nice backs. Throw Bredesen in there is like a H-back, fullback, old school kind of guy. We have the talent in the backfield to really complement this offense and let this young quarterback have some space to grow. This offensive line had better get better fast.
Yeah, one in particular in Justice Haynes. Jordan Marshall's been held in check. And this is a guy that everybody told me in the offseason, we love this guy. This guy's going to be, special is a word they throw around now. They said it last year, he's going to be special. He doesn't have a whole lot of room to move. Maybe it's predictable with the way they're using him. I don't know. Justice Haynes is clearly the more explosive of the two. When he gets loose, boy, he can move, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they continue to use these guys. There were times that they lined them up together in the backfield against New Mexico. We didn't see any of that. So, and I do wonder, because it does seem that they revert when things aren't going well. They kind of revert to what Sharon Moore thinks is going to work or has worked with better personnel, and it doesn't work so well. So he's kind of the common denominator between some of the stuff we saw last year when things weren't going well with Kirk Campbell and with Chip Lindsey. Now we're not going to have Sharon for the next 2 weeks. So are they going to turn it loose a little bit? Are they going to open it up? How's it going to look? This is what's really interesting to me. Wouldn't you think?
Well, it's certainly going to be interesting. And here's what we'll be looking for come Saturday against Central Michigan, because I'm guessing Central's going to try to execute a defensive game plan, maybe similar to what Oklahoma did, but they're not going to have the horses that Oklahoma has. But more importantly, in 2 weeks, and I know we're getting out ahead, at Nebraska will be a far bigger litmus test of where this offensive line is developing. But in the next certainly Saturday and this week, they better come off the ball with a lot more ass kicking vengeance. They better be in position. And if you continue to see guys at the line of scrimmage, standing up in a stalemate at the line of scrimmage, you will know we are not getting better.
Yeah.
And sadly, what will happen is another guy's going to get hurt, because you just can't do that. And I don't care if you're on the backside of the play or not. You cannot play basketball in the box on the offensive football field.
Yep.
You can't position guys out there. You can maybe do that at a stretched wide zone or something. If you know it's a toss right and you're the left tackle, maybe you can drop a shoulder and do some sort of box out shit on the backside over there. Other than that, you better be getting off the ball and getting after people, because it just causes problems otherwise. So it's got to happen, Balas. And again, I don't know, so this is 1 year, and now let's just call it one game out of two. The big question mark coming into this season was this offensive line. And boy, they need to get better.
They do. And the big concern, according to people that we talk to regularly, was right guard. And we were seeing that Brady Norton, Nathan Afobe just is not getting the job done. I don't know what to say about it. He's got the body, right? I don't know what it is. When you've got the physical tools and things just aren't getting accomplished, what is it with him that you've seen that is preventing him from really reaching what I think is some pretty vast potential?
Well, again, when I look at guys that are struggling or missing, and certainly I did it myself at the time, but I know what I know looking back, and I watch offensive linemen now. I look at the great ones at the college and pro level and look at the guys that struggle. The common denominators are usually the same. It's a poor start out of your stance, a bad step or two, and in pass protection, if you bend at the waist at all, you lose the ability to react to what defensive linemen are doing. And Afobe did that. And I watched Norton do that too. And any offensive lineman, we talked about it with Link last year, that was his struggle. When your head gets out over your ankles or over your knees and certainly over your toes, you're probably going to get beat. And you're of no use for help to your fellow offensive lineman if something twists your way or comes over the top or goes away. You have to have your head back, your hips down, and your feet on the ready to move. And every time we get in trouble, I could probably turn on the film and show you one or more guys that are in that bad body set to not allow them to perform. And so that's it. It's just a technique thing, Balas. And this goes back to whatever they're doing in practice to get these guys to be disciplined, to force themselves into those body positions, to be effective blockers out there, just needs to get better as fast as possible.
Yeah, you got a big one coming up in 2 weeks. That's really going to determine the direction of the season, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to win at USC. The way they played, and we all look at Ohio State and you say, well, they're in their heads, so on and so forth. There's going to be a lot of improvement needed to beat Ohio State too. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah. I mean, that team has got some playmakers and the way that they're playing now, if they're going to play to try to out tough Michigan this year again, I think you're going to see a little bit of a mix. I think they're going to be more prepared for that game than ever. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. I want to talk a little bit about what really impressed me on Saturday night was the Oklahoma offensive line that had been a question mark coming in. I thought those guys played extremely well against the Michigan front that we had heard the front seven is the strength of this team, but I thought Oklahoma was really disciplined and did things right.
Balas, I thought the same thing. I heard in the television copy, there's a lot of question marks about the Oklahoma offensive line. So the first thing I do is I look for a good view of them from the camera and just look at them physically. What did you see out of those guys? I saw a bunch of 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guys that looked a lot like our guys in the uniform. Yeah. Like you could trade uniforms. Do they physically look a lot different than us? I don't think so.
Nope.
So they have the talent, but they were effectively putting their feet where they belong, and their eyeballs and their hands and their knowledge and skill of that offense was just executed better. And so again, it comes back to the same thing. As an old offensive lineman myself, when things get a little crazy and it gets a little loud and you start losing your ability to function and perform, you have to go back to what you've been taught, which is understand the play, understand what you're trying to do as a unit, and where is your first move going to be? And it needs to be better than the guy across from you. Because if it's not, you're automatically at a disadvantage and probably going to lose the play. And Oklahoma just did a nice job of getting out of their stances and being where they needed to be.
Were you disappointed with the Michigan defensive line in this game? It didn't look like they were getting as much knockback. It didn't look like they were getting upfield as much. And the gap integrity at times, especially on the edges, it looked like they lost the edge a few times.
Yeah, they did. And again, we're used to Grant and Graham in that, they're in the middle. Grant Newsome and Grant, they're the two outstanding defensive tackles we had a year ago. And in the first half, we were missing Jay-Sean.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big loss. I mean, that kid's a presence out there, Barham, when he's in there. And so those things combined, Rayshawn Benny is in there. He's trying, but he's getting blocked a lot of times. He's given the effort, but he's not having the same impact as some of the recent defensive tackles we've seen in there. And collectively, are we as talented? Derek Moore certainly is, but there's always ways to block one outstanding guy. Mm-hmm. You can do it. Any average offensive line can take care of one outstanding player. And if you don't have any outstanding players, then that's even easier. You can slide guys around. That allows backs to go free more often, tight ends, you name it, whatever you want to do. And so the Michigan defensive line, I thought, played stout at times, looked good, but not enough, right? Because that quarterback, again, the quarterback of theirs presented all kinds of problems.
He did.
And he presents a dynamic that you're going to see the rest of the season. That kid's going to raise some eyebrows nationally. And so I thought the defense played admirably. I really did. I thought, did the defense play well enough to win? I think they did. But this offense is at least in this game, with the exception of a couple bright spots, was nowhere close to complement them. So you talk about bad body language. Offensively, you can have bad body language if things just aren't working, and maybe your scripted plays aren't matching what the defense is showing. You can also get bad body language on the field if the other side of the team has no chance of success. So if the defensive guys are sensing that the offense is going to barely score 10 points tonight, then that puts a lot more load on their shoulders. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's what often happens. In spite of the fact you won't see defensive and offensive guys going at it on the sideline, but but there's still a feeling if you're a defensive player, you look up and it's third down and long again, you know you're going back on the field again. It can wear them down.
Yeah, I can imagine. The one thing I will say, the tackling needed to be better. They missed some opportunities out there, quite a few missed tackles. There was a blitz that changed the game, right? They had a perfectly called blitz that Brandon Hillman comes around on the safety. Yeah.
Yep.
And
yep.
Yeah, you're down 14-7. And instead of getting to him, it's a 40, 50-yard gain over the head of a defensive back who probably thought the sack was coming, right? And you relax a little bit, you let material out of the pocket to look, and then all of a sudden it's a big play. So
and
it can't happen.
I would say, to go along with it, that I thought the Michigan defense played hard.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they played admirable. Again, Oklahoma just made plays.
Yeah.
Some of those catches, the kid number 24 looked like a fullback kid, big, strong, thick kid, and a couple of their wideouts. The Burt kid from right down the road here in Inkster, just an outstanding player. So credit to Oklahoma's offense. They got playmakers, Balas, and they made plays, even though they were, a couple circus catches and some stuff. But that was a pretty nice team that we played.
It was. And Brett Venables is a great defensive coach. There's no question about it. Looks like he has some offense. I will be interested to see how they do against their tough schedule, right? I think we'll know a lot more about this team when they play better competition too. They needed this game, period, end of story. This was it for Brett Venables, right? You lose this game and then you're like, oh my God, it's only downhill from here because you're playing against a true freshman quarterback. A lot of question marks on offense. You'd better win this football game. So they put a lot into this one. The atmosphere was fantastic and the people were great too.
Yeah, I heard that. It was good atmosphere there. That's good to hear. I said this to some high school buddies who were watching. They were watching this game too because they're SEC, Texas A&M guys, and they all hate Texas. All my high school buddies, they can't stand them. And I said, well, good news, fellas. Oklahoma's beating Texas this year in the Red River rivalry. That's going to happen.
We'll see.
I have no question watching this year. I expect that to happen. Oklahoma's going to win some games, Balas. They're a pretty good team. We
did have a rental car from Texas with a Texas plate, and it got keyed, believe it or not. So thankfully, whoever checked it in didn't notice. And I'm like, what do we do? Is this my fault? So parking too close to an Oklahoma fan or something like that. So that was interesting. Yeah. But for the most part, that was a great fan base, a great place to watch a football game. So hopefully Michigan fans return the favor, and it's nice to them when they come up here because just really nice hospitality. So anyway, he's Doug Skene. Doug, I appreciate your time, man. We'll do this again next week, and hopefully we have much better things to talk about. Sounds like Gio El-Hadi is day-to-day. He's got to be better. I didn't think he played all that great when he was in there before he got hurt.
No, collectively, there's no offensive lineman so far this year in that game Saturday night where you go, wow, that dude really stood out. Collectively, as a group, nowhere near good enough. It sounds like a replay of last season. They got to get better as fast as possible. And whatever Grant Newsom and Castillo need to do to get them going with Sharon, they better get it done this week. Get it going.
It'll be 2 weeks at Nebraska that we really find out what this team is made of, in my opinion.
That's right. Yep.
Doug, I appreciate you. We will do this again next week, and we will talk to you then.
Go Blue.